Hi everyone, welcome to the second meeting of GMASS this fall semester. We hope you are doing great. Thank you for being here. Today we will be talking about applying for an academic position for the first time as a recent graduate. We have three guests. I will introduce them briefly, and we will be trying to chat, discuss, and share information about this important topic. So, first of all, as graduate students approach the completion of their doctoral studies, understanding the academic job market and positioning oneself as a competitive candidate becomes increasingly critical. The transition from graduate student to faculty member represents not only a significant professional milestone, but also an opportunity to shape one's scholarly identity and contribute meaningfully to the advancement of knowledge in education and psychology. Whether pursuing careers in educational measurement, counseling psychology, quant methods, or related disciplines, recent graduates face the challenge of navigating a competitive landscape where research productivity, teaching effectiveness, and professional networking intersect in complex ways. Today's panel brings together three accomplished faculty members, each at different stages of their academic careers and representing diverse specializations within education and psychology, to share insights on identifying opportunities, crafting compelling applications, and developing the qualities that distinguish successful candidates. Whether you are preparing to enter the job market soon or beginning to consider your professional trajectory, this conversation aims to empower you to pursue academic positions with confidence and strategic purpose. Let me introduce briefly our speakers. First, Dr. Stephen Dunbar is the Hieronymus-Feldt Professor of Educational Measurement and Statistics in the College of Education at the University of Iowa, where he serves as co-director of Iowa Testing Programs. A recipient of the 2019 Regents Faculty and Staff Excellence Award, Dr. Dunbar has taught at the University of Iowa for 38 years, and he is recognized as the lead author of the most widely used achievement battery in the United States. He holds a BA in English from the University of Wisconsin-Madison, an MA in Applied Linguistics from the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign, and a Ph.D. in Educational Psychology from the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. As co-director of ITP, a program with over 90 years of history developing high-quality educational assessment, Dr. Dunbar has been instrumental in creating the Iowa Statewide Assessment of Student Progress and continuing the legacy of the Iowa assessments, among the most widely respected standardized achievement tests in the world. His research portfolio includes works on growth modeling, value-added teacher effectiveness analysis, automated scoring, and bias-free assessment development. Thank you, Dr. Dunbar. Then we have Martin Kivlingham. Dr. Martin Kivlingham is a professor of counseling psychology in the College of Education at the University of Iowa, where he has served since 2015. He earned his BA in theater from the University of Maryland and his PhD in counseling psychology from the University of Wisconsin-Madison in 2015, completing his pre-doctoral internship at the University of Maryland Counseling Center. Dr. Kivlingham's research focuses on psychotherapy process and outcome, group psychotherapy, therapist multicultural orientation, and psychotherapy training. As co-director of the telepsychology training clinic housed in the College of Education, he oversees a community-based training clinic that provides free and accessible mental health services to underserved and underinsured Iowans across the state. A licensed psychologist in Iowa, Dr. Kivlingham also serves as a visiting associate professor in internal medicine at the University of Iowa Hospital and Clinics, where he conducts research and provides clinical services as part of the Psychological Oncology program at the Holden Comprehensive Cancer Center. Thank you, Dr. Martin. Finally, Dr. Alfonso Martinez. Dr. Martinez is an assistant professor of psychometrics and quant psychology at Fordham University, specializing in quantum methods and stats. He earned his BA in psychology from California State University, Fresno in 2019 and completed his graduate training at the University of Iowa, where he received an MA in Psychological and Quantitative Foundations, a MS in Statistics, and a Ph.D. in Psychological and Quantitative Foundations in 2024. Dr. Martinez's research focuses on the development, evaluation, and application of novel psychometric statistical and computational methods for the social, behavioral, and psychological sciences. His areas of expertise include generalized latent variable modeling, such as cognitive diagnostic modeling and IRT, Bayesian inference and prediction, longitudinal data analysis, measurement invariance, probabilistic graphical models, mixed modeling, and computational statistics. His methodological research has been published in leading journals, establishing him as an emerging leader in quant psychology. Thank you, Alfonso. So that being said, we have one main topic, as I told you, which is applying for an academic position for the first time as a recent graduate, and we have three subtopics: how to identify and pursue academic opportunities, advice on best practices and common pitfalls during the application process, and key qualities that make a strong candidate. I have a couple of questions. Of course, the audience can participate too, and I would like to open the conversation asking to our guests, where should recent graduates look for academic job postings, and how early in their final year should they start the search process? Let me paste this in the chat so you have that reference too. There we go. Who wants to start?
I have a quick answer.
Yeah.
Everywhere. In the following sense, that different universities, and by different universities and higher ed institutions, I mean, depending on whether you're looking at Research One, whether you're looking at mid-level public universities, whether you're looking at privates, whether you're looking at liberal arts colleges, that is the whole range of higher education. If that is your interest, then you're going to find postings for academic positions in all kinds of different places. I don't know, Martin, if you or Alfonso have other thoughts on that, but most postings are going to be electronic now.
Yep.
And they may range for everywhere from LinkedIn to university websites. Most Research One universities, and I would expect others now, have specific job sites. At Iowa, it's Jobs at Iowa, and academic positions as well as staff positions are all posted there. When they become, they're posted there first when they become official, when they become approved by all the levels of administration necessary. Prior to that, it's word of mouth, other kinds of things. So I'm going to stop there.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with everything. The one piece that I would add, and this is, within my discipline specifically, I'm sure, this is similar for EMS, but when I was on the job market, I didn't look at Indeed, I didn't look at any LinkedIn or anything like that. I went just straight to Division 17 of the American Psychological Association. That's my professional organization. I'm a member, so I'm on their listserv. And every single counseling psychology faculty position was posted there. So that made it a little bit easy, and it can be nerve-wracking to not know if you've done an exhaustive search or if you're missing some. So if you can find professional networks or professional organizations, do y'all have something similar, would you say, Steve? Or
there's
AERA?
Yeah, AERA has a listserv that is for the entire organization, not just Division D. Division D has which is our home.
Yeah. And within that division, do
they have
push out?
NCME will do that, but like I said, everywhere. You don't know where something will show up first. Universities don't always, search committees, that is, don't always get the full array of possible outlets. Most universities are required to advertise in places that will attract a diverse array of applicants, I think. But in some ways, I'm maybe not the best person to answer this question. I'm going to turn it over to Alfonso in a minute, but you folks are all the masters of the electronic world and the social media outlets where some things, where word of mouth might spread information. But what I was focusing my thoughts on were what would be the official of record postings of openings. Let's go to Alfonso.
Yes, and I would say that has been my experience as well, is looking through the official channels. Particularly, like the panel has said, looking at, for example, AERA webpage. And if you are a student member of AERA or NCME, they usually send out like newsletters every month or so. And those typically tend to have job postings that are updated or recent and current. There's also a few websites that I used when I was looking, when I was in the job market. I'll post one here in the chat, and then Vladimir, if you can share it with everyone else.
Sure.
So this one here it's not an official website in the sense that it's more peer managed. Whenever folks find out about positions, they'll post the links on this webpage, and they tend to update that when they can. Currently, there's a few positions up there now that have been for this academic for this year. But yeah, looking at societies like the Psychometric Society has a webpage where they dedicate to job postings. That's typically where you'll see Psychometric Society, NCME, AERA is where you'll typically find a lot of these postings, in my experience when I was on the market. And then for the second question, how early in the final year you should begin looking for or begin the search process? I would say maybe even before the final year. When I started looking, when I was around maybe my second, third year, I knew I wasn't qualified, obviously, to apply at that point, but I wanted to sort of prepare myself for when I was qualified, how the process would look. And so I sort of got in the state of mind early on of, let's see what the positions look like. I read the job postings. I would save some of those postings. I still have a few from 2022, 2023 postings that I saved. I took a screenshot of the posting on the website, and I kept those just as reference, just sort of priming myself a few years before I would get on the market. During the final year, this would happen at the very beginning, I would say, of the academic year. A lot of these positions tend to happen during the fall, or they tend to do the search during the fall. And during winter break or early spring, they'll invite candidates over to campus to visit. And typically by mid-spring, they have ideally the individual who's going to take the position. But in the final year, it would start probably, I would say, summer, early August is when you would want to start looking, and when those positions would start being posted on the internet.
I'd agree with Alfonso on the year before. My own personal experience was that I was looking for jobs the year before I thought I would graduate. And there were 2 jobs posted at the University of Iowa, which I applied for, even though it was a year early. I thought, what the heck? They offered me one. And then the race began to finish before I had to start. I would not recommend that to anyone, especially in this day and age, but they must have been desperate.
Well, something that something that was mentioned in our past meeting that I think that can be discussed here was this idea of the relevance of networking for postdoc positions, for academic positions. So one of the questions that I had was, How important is networking in identifying academic opportunities, and what strategies would you recommend for building professional connections in your field?
Yeah, I can start this one as well. I would say networking has been probably pretty important, at least in my experience, in looking for positions. Uh, a lot of these came from student-led organizations, like NCME has student-led organizations that I was a part of, and I would hear about a lot. I would do a lot of networking uh, in those organizations, and I would hear about, oh, so and so is gonna begin to look for is gonna have an opening in the coming year. Uh, Also at conferences, networking at conferences was something that I tried to be intentional about because I knew that it would serve me well in the future. Um, Networking and it's overall, I think the networking is a good it's a good skill to begin practicing, as soon as you can. Uh, and in terms of forgetting the second question that was in there. Uh,
So I'll jump in on the networking. I do think networking is important. Networking among peers, which Alfonso was describing, is important, but it might be more important after you've landed your job, because those networks around the country are going to help you develop collaborations, which can stimulate your own research and publication efforts. I think one of the things to be aware of when you're a student is the networking that your own professors do and understanding what their networks are. I can give you one example of a student that I placed in an academic job at Penn State. This was a number of years ago. But lo and behold, it turned out that the person who was the chair of the search committee was in graduate school at the same time I was at Illinois. Also, Dr. Vispol was a graduate student at the same time. And guess what? That student had two people on her list of references who knew the person who was chair of the search committee. That kind of networking can be extremely influential. So it's important to recognize just what your own peer network is, but develop an understanding of who your faculty that have worked closely with you during your graduate studies, who they happen to be networked with.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll piggyback on that just real quickly. And networking, it leaves a bad taste in my mouth. I'll just be honest.
No question about it.
No
question about it. Right.
But I appreciate what you're talking about. There's a network that's more structural, where you're not working at it. It's just you are connected to people via going to grad school, via advisors, collaborate. Right. Those are just structures and social networks that exist or are created over time. Let your advisor know of jobs you're looking at or opportunities you're going for, because I then can reach out to my network. I can reach out to my network and put in a good word, right? At the level of the applicant, I try not to think of it as networking. I try to think of it as just building relationships, like organic, genuine relationships, just show interest in people, try to find common ground, and maybe in a year, 5 years, 10 years, something will come of it. Maybe something will never come of it. But if you're out there networking just to network, you can smell it a mile away. And at least for me, it's very off-putting.
Well, I totally agree. You have to be very careful about it. But the example that I was describing, the last thing I would have ever done would have been to call the chair of that search committee and say, hey, I've got somebody you ought to be thinking of. It just happened to be coincidence.
Yeah.
And as coincidence, the fact that there was an existing relationship may well have helped this person. This person was hired based on her merits. And that would have, knowing the chair, that would have been the driver in it. but there can be a slippery slope in that process, especially if, as the candidate, you're sort of aggressively pursuing networking relationships. That's really a bad look, I think.
Yeah.
That's a good point. So I have a follow-up question because how can we as students, how can we try not to sound desperate? That was something that was mentioned in our last meeting too, but when we are trying to make connections, when we are trying to meeting people, potential colleagues or people who can work with us, how can we do that? What's a good first approach from your perspective? What sounds good? What's something that you find can be interesting from someone, especially from a student, maybe who's not looking for a job yet, but trying to make a connection with you?
Yeah. In today's world where most of LinkedIn and Instagram and all this is a vehicle for self-promotion, I think a differentiating factor and something that can be really pro-social and can really foster those connections is highlighting other people's work. So if you have a LinkedIn account and there's this awesome paper that just came out, post that. Be like, wow, so impressed with what's going on, with this paper and what this lab just pushed out, and tag them in it. You don't have to go any further. You don't have to make an actual connection or whatnot.
Right.
But it's being pro-social, it's being humble, it's lifting up other people's work.
Right.
And that's just a good thing to do. And it also will serve you well, in the long run. That's just my kind of
take. No, I'd agree with that. I'd almost characterize it also, and this is sort of a general thing, regardless of the medium, but demonstrating a genuine substantive interest in the work, not the relationships that you're establishing. You establish the relationships by virtue of a genuine interest in the substantive aspects of the work, and then be up to speed on those things once you do reach out, because somebody will follow up with a question and expect you to know your stuff.
Yeah.
That you're not just sort of social about it.
Yes.
Alfonso.
Yeah, I would absolutely agree with those points. I think it's being having a genuine interest in the work. And one of the practices that I did, or one of the things that I try to do, was when I found a paper that was really interesting, or for example, a research line, I would email the author and maybe just ask a question or two about what their paper, papers that I was genuinely interested in. And there might have been something in there that I thought was interesting, or maybe I wanted to learn a little bit more about. And I thought that was very nice, because I got to hear from, maybe not make a connection, but I got to hear back from the author of the paper, for example, and I was able to ask a question. And that sort of kept me engaged with the research. And I do think it is important to have sort of that genuine interest.
Question from the audience? I have plenty. So, other thing now, now talking about more specific things. All of these positions have requirements. So related to that aspect of the process, for you, what are the most critical components of a strong application package, such as the CV, the cover letter, research statement, the teaching philosophy? And how should recent graduates prioritize their time in developing these materials?
You want to lead us off, Alfonso?
Yes, I can. I was just writing down the question here. Yeah, I was writing down the question. Thank you, Vladimir, for putting it in the chat. Yeah, I think from my perspective, and again, I don't have a ton of experience in this area, specific in the sense that I haven't been on many job committees or search committees, and these are going to vary widely, I would say, by the university or the institution. the organization, as well as things like fit within the department or the organization. So there's a lot of variability here. But in terms of critical components of a strong application package, in conversations that I had when I was, that I've had now, that I've landed a faculty position, one of the things that sort of stood out to me was that it's not necessary. They're looking for potential for, say, something like excellence in research, depending on the institution. They're looking for potential in some ways. And if this is like a teaching institution, for example, where the focus is on teaching, they're looking for indicators of potential and excellence in teaching, for instance. And so I think I know that's a very sort of amorphous concept in ways, but I think there are ways to highlight that in like a CV, for example, or a cover letter. In a cover letter, for instance, highlighting your plan, or maybe a research statement, highlighting your plan for research for the next 2 to 5 years or so, to show that you've thought about what a research program might look like. Maybe give some examples about some research projects that excite you and some research projects that you'd like to initiate during the first few years in an academic position. Same with teaching philosophy, is writing about your teaching experience, but also things about teaching, aspects related to teaching that you'd like to improve, or things that you'd like to do in the classroom if you were able to teach a specific type of course. But I would say that was sort of my experiences at the moment. Again, it's limited in the sense that I've only been doing this for about a year, but I hope that sort of falls in line. I hope the rest of the panel sort of agrees with some of those points.
Mm-hmm. Oh, by all means.
Yeah.
I think very often for graduate students, especially if graduate students are coming from a program like Iowa's, where there tend to be more research assistantships than there are teaching assistantships, for example, and where teaching assistantships may not really involve classroom teaching, but may involve working with students, but not necessarily leading a classroom session. One of the questions I was asked, and I ask candidates who are interested in positions here at Iowa, is about details about classroom teaching experience. I was asked, were you in charge of a course that from beginning to end you were responsible for? You did all the grading, you turned in the grades, your grades had to pass departmental norms, all of those things. Those are hard things to gain experience in a Research One university, I think, like we are in. And very often what committees and audiences of job interviews will be using as evidence for that is going to be your job talk. Your job talk is going to reveal to a general audience whether you can explain complex things in language simple enough for a broad range of students, in this case, attendees of the job talk, to understand. That came out in our most recent, some of our most recent research, that it wasn't just the experience, but it was what evidence the interview process revealed about potential for effective teaching. And I think Alfonso mentioned a really important word when he said we're talking about potential when we're talking about the first academic job that candidate is looking for. But I think it's important to not underestimate the importance of that teaching component of even a Research One job, because when we're looking at assistant professors up for third year review, the first thing we look at is how are their teaching evaluations, because that's sort of the entry into higher level evaluations of research.
Yeah.
You're the DEO.
I
mean,
no, I totally agree with you, Alfonso. I appreciate how you noted it's really dependent on the institution and it totally
Right.
varies.
Very
I will
much so.
just very quickly say, if I could only look at one document as a search chair, I would prioritize the CV. That's all I want to look at.
That's true.
I'm not saying the others are not important, but if I could only look at one, it's the CV. And like the reality, I won't go there. But like if you don't have the experience, then it's hard to like shape your materials in a way that, and so it's important to also be applying for jobs that like really fit like your interests, your experience, and what you want to do as well.
That's a good point. What do you think is a good CV? Because I've seen many templates. You Google that good CV and you have 100 templates. In your experience, what can be considered like an effective CV in terms of characteristics, the most important information? What are you looking for related to an academic position?
Yeah,
that's a good question. But now with as much information out publicly accessible, our CVs, if we keep them up to date, are publicly accessible, for example.
Yeah.
And now if I'm applying for a position at the University of X, I might just go to the department that I'm applying to and look at some of the faculty CVs and format my document so that it looks like what the members of that department are responsible for preparing.
Yep.
As opposed to the glitzy, more business-oriented approach that might be engaging, but not consistent with what the academic mind frame is.
Yeah, a good application you will have different versions of your CV for different job descriptions.
Yeah.
Like Alfonso said, if you're going for a teaching institution, you're going to put your teaching experience above your scholarship. If you're going for an R1 research position, tenure track, you're going to lead with your scholarship, right? So there's no one perfect CV. You tailor it to the job. Alfonso, you've been looking like you've been thinking of something.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to mention as well. Is it would be tailored to the particular posting. I had around, I want to say maybe 4 to 5, maybe 6 different versions of my CV.
Yeah.
If it was a more research intensive institution where it was tenure track line, for example, I led with the research. I had a section on research interest, a few keywords there, and then led with any publications, any posters, conference presentations, for example. If it was a teaching institution, I moved those were more secondary, and I put in some of my teaching experiences first, right after sort of my contact information. So it is very much going to depend on the type of the position. But I think most of these, at least in the academic space, are going to have those components, right? The research is going to have some section on teaching, and maybe some other activities like skills that you've engaged in throughout your time as a graduate student.
I agree. Specialized training that you've received at conference training sessions or things like that. Those things are important, and they could be important components of either teaching or research, because you might have attended training sessions that have a teaching orientation. If you've participated in the collegiate teaching certificate at Iowa, that's going to show very well, I think, for academic positions. I do want to say one thing about the 3 or 4 or 5 versions, which I agree with makes perfect sense. They all have to be honest. They all have to contain the same information, but you're trying to orient that information in a way that highlights the key features of the position you're applying for. And be cautious about the inflated CV, which is fairly easy to identify
Yeah.
by a savvy search committee. Your CV should be a very clear, professionally developed statement of your experience.
Yeah.
So
Now-
I have
Yes.
a question regarding that. So
Yes,
given
please.
the number of applications that you have to do and the number of materials that each of those applications require, like simply teaching statements, research statements, diversity and inclusion statements sometimes, how much level of customization do you have to do? Probably Alfonso would have more recent experience in this. How much level of customization do you have to do for each of those components to make sure that you are not wasting too much time, organizing things that should. Yeah.
So I'm thinking of Alfonso's 4 or 5 as categories, as opposed to individual applications, but maybe he can comment on that.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it would be more same CV, but just restructured. Is what I meant by the four to different 5 versions. Same CV restructured so that one section would be show up first than the others. In terms of like research statements and teaching statements, I kept these. I would say were tailored to this position, but also one of the things that I think is important is to, well, and my approach when I was on the market was I did not apply for positions that were looking for a particular expertise that I did not have. For example, there were some universities when I was on the job market that explicitly stated they were interested in someone who did research on, I believe, artificial intelligence and AI, or artificial intelligence and machine learning. Now, I didn't have those areas of expertise when I was when I was looking at that posting. And I don't think it would have been a good use of my time to try to create something to make it seem like I have those skills when I did not. And so in my approach in doing that, that sort of led me to not apply to some positions. And so I really only focused on those that I felt that my content areas matched or aligned with what the university was interested in or the department was interested in. And so because of that, I didn't change my research statements or my teaching statements too much because I was applying to roles that were somewhat similar, more similar than they were different in some ways.
Yeah, I think I had a very similar experience. You're right. You have a limited amount of time and resources, right? So, my teaching statements, all those statements were pretty similar across my applications. What I did is I wrote what I thought was a really strong cover letter. Everyone's going to need a cover letter, really strong cover letter. And that's what I customized. I applied to like 25 faculty positions my last year in my doctoral program. And so if you can do that, I think that's really helpful. And then the other pieces you can largely just use across institutions and applications. That was my approach to this.
25 sounds like a lot.
I wasn't very confident. I was not very confident in landing one, so I had to get a lot out there.
I applied for 2.
Between 2 and 25. That's the range
It was a sign of the times.
Things have changed a little bit, but
Sign of the times.
Yeah, so that's related to what to do. Now, related to what not to do. What are the most common mistakes you have seen candidates make during the applications and interview process, and how can they be avoided?
Yeah, I don't know if I have too much to say in mistakes that I've seen because again, I haven't been on many search committees, so I haven't seen many of those mistakes that the rest of the panel might have a lot more experience with. But I think one of a potential pitfall from the perspective of the applicant is applying to positions where there's not good fit. And I think one of the ways that I tried to gauge this when I was on the market is, for some context, when I was on the market, there was around 20 to 30 positions in quant methods, tenure line, teaching track, about 20 to 30, but I only applied to 12. out of those, so less than half. And a lot of those were because of I felt that my research didn't maybe fit with what the university wanted or the program wanted. And that might be one potential pitfall is potentially applying to positions where there's not good fit. And one of the ways I gauged this was if I struggled to sort of write my materials for that particular position. If I struggled to write sentences where I said, this is why I'm a good fit for the university, that's when I started realizing maybe this is maybe I'm not a good fit, and the chair or the search committee is going to know that because it's not coming across in my materials potentially. Whereas those that I did felt were a good fit, they felt a little bit more natural to write. Still difficult, right? But a little bit more natural. I felt like I was able to say what I wanted to say with respect to my materials. That's on the perspective of the applicant, but in terms of other mistakes, I don't really have much to say there. Again, I haven't been on many search committees to be able to comment in that regard.
I would second the fit about self-evaluation of fit. Mm-hmm. It's very important to understand your own strengths and how those strengths correspond to the position description that you're looking at, because you can't, right, Alfonso, you can't fake it. And as soon as you realized you were faking it, you said, maybe not a good idea. I remember that same experience. I applied for the jobs that were education related in the measurement and quant methods field, as opposed to ones that were in psychology departments. I wasn't a graduate of a psychology department. I didn't think I would fit. And I knew the psychology departments. I had a lot of courses in them. I didn't think I would fit. So I think that remains important. On the mistakes, one mistake is you're applying for a job that you clearly don't fit. Your application gets a very quick read by the search committee, and it goes into the first screening reject pile because of that very thing. I would say on the dimension of, suppose you are to a point where you're in the first cut, or you're in the second cut. You may have a Zoom interview if you're in the first cut. Be prepared for that. Find out, if you can, from whoever your contact person is, something about the makeup of the search committee. Mm-hmm. At least their names would be public information, I think. That's important, so that you know whether this is a committee composed solely of the people in the narrow aspect of the program that your position is listed, or whether it's a department-wide search committee in a diverse department. And psych departments are very diverse. Yeah. Our own department of psych and quant is quite diverse. So not knowing the audience, I think, is a mistake. If you're a finalist and you're going to a campus visit, I would say the same thing. Try to learn what you can about the audiences of the different groups that you're going to meet with. Our candidates meet with graduate students. Our candidates meet with department-wide faculty. Our candidates may meet with specific program faculty. They may meet with the dean or an associate dean, and it's important to know the audience. And if you're talking to a dean, find out who the dean is and what that dean's area of expertise is, so that if something were to come up in the conversation, you've done your homework. I guess the other thing that means is you've sort of done your homework. And I can remember hearing that advice in those words, but doing your homework means learning about the audiences that you're going to encounter at various stages.
Which for me, have a little bit of sympathy. I'm this counseling psychologist coming into Iowa, and I was doing my due diligence. I was doing my homework, and I was going out to dinner with Walter Vispel and Tim Ainsley, and I was looking up their stuff, and I had no clue what they were researching, because it was just way over my head. So I tried the best I could, but you know, be knowledgeable and also know that like you're going to meet with a diverse audience, right?
Oh,
And
yeah.
and a lot of it is going to maybe be out of your area of expertise. And so just be creative in how you also, kind of can present that, hey, I've done my research, I know what you do.
Right. Don't try to be them. Don't try to be in their field,
Expert.
but try to communicate that you understand their perspectives on
Yeah.
things.
Mhm.
And if you're meeting with a quant perspective, so you've got research methods, right? To touch base with them. They're not going to tell you much about your field, those two.
EMS is pretty intimidating. So, hey, the last just little thing I will say here is, and y'all may disagree, but don't. There's no need to email the search chair. There's no need to reach out before and then be like, I'm really excited for this job. I submitted my materials.
Yeah.
It's not going to give you
That's
an
a bad
edge.
look.
It's never
That's a
going to
bad
give you an
look.
edge. You're not going to get kicked out of the applicant pool, but it's not going to be like, oh my gosh, they emailed me and I had to spend time reading this email. So let's put them to the top.
Right. No, that's not going to happen.
Happens all the time though, right?
That you get those.
Yeah.
You get those follow-up inquiries after all the materials are in.
Yeah.
Search committee can't even find a time to meet.
Yeah.
And you get 5 emails from 5 applicants saying, hey, I just want you to not forget about me.
Yeah.
They're not interested in those emails.
We haven't forgotten.
That's a good advice.
And it's anxiety management. It's emotion regulation on the applicant side.
That's his department.
Yeah.
So now, related to what we have been talking about, one of the questions that I have is, what qualities or experiences do search committees typically look for in entry-level candidates, and how can recent graduates effectively demonstrate this in their applications?
Put that in the chat.
Yes,
I can't remember it all.
there you go.
So here's a little like insider tip. Oh, sorry, Alfonso. I'll just say this real quick. We have to, as a search committee, based on the required and desirable qualifications, we basically have a rubric that we have to then justify if this person met all those and that's why we want to bring them on, or if they didn't. So you just speak directly and explicitly to the required and desirable, make it super easy for the search committee to be like, boom, 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 boom. They fit all of it. Like, we can get this through our HR office and with no questions. Does that make sense?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, at Iowa, every search committee, when it's making its final deliberations and making a recommendation to hire, they have to not only provide specific statements about the candidate they want to hire, but they have to provide specific statements as to why each of the finalists, this is at the finalist
and for interview,
and
for we want to bring these
interview,
people on campus.
the pre-interview stage, right? So those have to be very explicitly articulated in the language of what we call basic and desirable qualifications.
Yeah.
Now, other universities might have other names for the same things,
but you'll see.
But they will have that structure, and it's related to EEOC guidelines and all kinds of aspects of the interview process that are designed to promote equity.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think those points are right in line with what I was going to say. I think what I'll add is, again, fit. That I've seen, and so I've met other colleagues now who, in conversations say, "Oh, I applied to this position, or I applied to this position, similar positions." And one thing I've known from, or sort of gathered from these conversations, is that fit is really important. There's been, this is sort of where I think that the CV can be a little deceptive in a sense, because you might have people who are very, very long CVs. They've done a lot of work, let's say, but it's not in an area that the committee wants or is looking for. And so in that sense, that CV is not really going to help you a whole lot because that's not what the committee is or what the search committee is looking for. And so I think that's one of the qualities, right? Is again fit. One of the things that I think is a little bit that I've more recently learned is that universities like to have diversity in the research areas, for example, for the faculty. So faculty that don't have all this exact same research line, because then it's a very homogeneous sort of group. So they look for, I think it's a good idea to have those diverse experiences, and they look for that as well. But yeah, fit is I think is potentially maybe one of the more important things that will determine whether you get sort of the second screen or sort of you don't make it past the first.
Yeah. On fit is a really difficult thing, I think, for a young professional to understand. I still have questions about it. I've still made mistakes with regard to trying to understand fit. But in terms of what search committees might be looking for, there is a sort of a realm of it's an implied realm of qualifications that may not be articulated in terms of basic and desirables, but are indicators of them. So, for example, evidence on the CV that you as a young professional are truly engaged in the profession. And that is by your activity in terms of presentations at conferences. If those aren't considered publications, they are considered evidence of your engagement in the profession, that you've tried to be a regular presenter. You may have even presented in situations of regional conferences might be much more important for a non-research one university than for an R1 university. So I think that's one example where there are things that may not appear as the basic and desirables, but are indicators of something. And that engagement to the profession is commitment to succeed, I think, in the way I would look at a CV. There can be other things, that might involve I know in your field, various kinds of service work that students would have been engaged in that in your field might be actually pre-practicum or practicum experiences, and then extensions of that. Those kinds of things may not show up as basic and desirable, but they are indicators of a commitment to a field that I think is important.
Yeah.
Thank you. Well, 1 hour is not enough, right? So
You
thank
mean
you.
we talk too much?
No,
I've been told.
that was great. That was great. Well, we had many questions, but in order to time, we want to say thank you for your participation. Thank you for attending our GMASS meeting. Next meeting in December will be dedicated to applying for positions in industry. So this semester we're trying to cover different aspects of application process. And thank you again. We hope you had a good discussion as we had, and hope to see you soon. Thank you. Thank you so much for being here. Bye-bye.
You know.
Thank you again. Good seeing everyone.
Thank you, Alfonso. Thank you.